Alrighty, we are back December 23rd. We're going to cover a little news, obviously just not much at all. But then we're going to do a little deep dive on a team we want to fix, franchise
hmm
that's had some issues. And then we're going to do our throwback section. I feel like that's like the best thing to do right now. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, we've talked about Buck Showalter for a few weeks now, but the Mets have hired him to be their new manager, 3-year deal. Um, you know, I would manage the Yankees for 4 years, Diamondbacks for three, Rangers for four, Orioles for nine. So he has 20 years of experience, playoff experience. Like kind of like we've been saying, I feel like this was the best hire they could have made.
Yeah, man. Like I've been saying, for me, as like a fan from the outside looking in on the Mets, I thought Buck Showalter was like the top choice.
Yeah,
Just because of like all the guys you just brought in, plus the clubhouse already. Like you got Lindor, who has already played under a longtime manager in Terry Francona with the Indians for a
true,
while.
true.
So I think having a guy with experience, Lindor is kind of used to that. You know what I mean? So I actually think
Yeah,
this will help him. Not that he lost his way last year, but I feel like it possibly could have been because of like the lack of managerial experience from Rojas. Um,
never
you
know.
know what I mean? I just think that. Yeah, I mean, I think Buck Showalter, he's got a winning percentage over his career at 506, so a little bit over 500. That's pretty good. He has 1,000 something wins and 1,000 something losses. So he's managed a ton of games. And yeah, I mean, he never won a World Series, I don't think, but he brought the Yankees to the playoffs once, Diamondbacks to the playoffs once, and the Orioles made the playoffs 3 times under him. He also won 3 times the Manager of the Year 3 times. Not that that's an award that we like
I didn't
love
know
to
that
look at,
actually.
but
Huh.
yeah. So I mean, I think he's obvious that he's well liked in the clubhouse too. We've heard guys talk about him like Adam Jones. A lot of guys in the Orioles have talked really well about him in the past. So
Yeah, I think definitely the Orioles days are what comes to mind for me the most. I mean, partially I'm just old enough to like actually live through that, but
right,
yeah, no, he
yeah,
has it, and I feel like we said, the Mets have had so many guys over the years now that like I don't say don't know how to win, but they just haven't had that experience. They've always brought in the Terry Collins, oh shoot, Mickey
right,
Callaway, that's his name.
yeah, yeah,
Rojas, like these guys, they just don't have it. So to have a
right,
guy like Showalter, it's just I feel like it's gonna make at least some difference. A manager doesn't do everything, but like just some difference on this team, especially with I feel like it's win now mode now with the payroll.
yeah. And I think too, like it was big because like it's not like they kind of took Showalter out of like his retirement. It was obvious and like
Right.
apparent to people that he wanted to still manage. So like I think that's a big part of this too. Is like he wants to do this. It's not like he was
Mm-hmm.
on the fence and the Mets had to like convince him. I think like towards the end of last year, there were a lot of people talking about how he wanted to manage for whoever because there were a lot more managerial openings like a while, like 2 months ago or something. So
Yeah.
I think that was a big part of that too. I think that's going to be why he's going to be the perfect fit too.
Yeah. So completely different direction though. The A's went in. So they have hired Mark Kotze to be their new manager on a 3-year deal. So he's been a coach for them since 2016, third base coach last year, but no managerial experience. Obviously different than Showalter. So curious your thought on that. I mean, we've talked how unpredictable they are, but now just a very different direction they went in after Bob Melvin.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in my opinion, number one, this kind of has to do with the fact that it looks like the A's are going to be going in a different direction than the Mets are
Yeah.
trying to go in. I think the fact that Melvin left and they kind of let him leave means that there's going to be a fire sale. Everyone's expecting it once the lockout's over.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what? If that's the case, I guess why not go for a guy who has been with your organization? He's obviously knows the minor league guys right now. So once they trade everybody, all these guys that come up, he'll have experience with. Um, and I mean, I guess like he learned a lot from Melvin, I'm assuming. So I think that he'll kind of bring the
Yeah.
same culture to the clubhouse that Melvin did. Obviously, that's big shoes to fill, but I think he will, I think, bring some of the same qualities that Melvin did.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think they're blowing it up. It's done. Especially with how much better the AL West is getting to. I mean, we talk about the
Right.
Rangers moving up now. So there's no real shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, you never know. Maybe he turns into a good manager. We'll see. But,
Yeah, I mean, if he does good too, we could see him managing in Oakland for a long time because, as we've seen, Melvin was there for what, almost 20 years or something, like
yeah, he
10
was there
years
a
maybe,
while.
whatever it was. He was there for a long time, and if Kotze, if they like him and then they eventually start to win with him, I could see him being there for a while too.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, like we were saying before, we kind of want to get into a deep dive. There's a team that I feel like no one has ever figured out how to make good. And it's the Colorado Rockies, man. I just it's
Yeah.
a tough team to understand because obviously the altitude is a big reason why they can't figure anything out. I mean, they really haven't been a winning franchise. They've only made the playoffs 5 times out of their 28 seasons.
Hmm.
They have only made it past the divisional series once. They won the NL pennant in 2007 when they lost the World Series to Boston. Um, I mean, it's just like obviously when batters hit the ball there, it usually flies. Like we saw in the home run derby last year, it's pretty
It was
crazy.
sick.
So I mean, I think that stadium is the perfect home run derby ballpark, but other than that, it's not very good for like hitters. I mean, for pitchers. And it's just whether it goes over the fence or not, or it goes into the gap. I mean, guys just rip the ball because it's a different atmosphere. Plus, the outfield there is gigantic. I don't know why they built it like that, but it kind
Dude,
of,
yeah.
I mean, I guess like they may have made the stadium like that to benefit their hitters, but I guess they didn't think about how it would affect their pitchers because then the
Right.
other hitters are going to do the same thing. So,
And it used to be worse, right? Because they always had the humidor. I don't know when they put that in, but I think the
yeah,
balls
and
used to
I'm
go
not
even
even.
further.
Yeah, I don't know how that affects it or not because there's no dome there, but I don't really know what they do. Um,
Well, doesn't it make the balls heavier essentially? Like they just don't travel as far?
I mean, possibly, but I don't think I've seen any effects on that. I don't know if you have really. I don't know. I don't even remember when exactly that happened. But like to me, I just think like power hitters are going to be power hitters there, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Like it's just like the way I don't know the ball flies there. I don't know the exact science behind everything, but I think another reason is like for pitchers, their off-speed pitches don't break the same way in altitude. Like for whatever reason
Mm.
that is, like a curveball won't break the same way. It'll almost stay flat, or like a slider, like because of the way the air is there, it doesn't move the same way. So I
Bro, we need
think
like a
that
scientist. We should have run like a
I
scientist on
know.
this episode. I'm so curious about that. Like, why would all right, I don't even know. But just like I would think it's thin air, it would break even more, but what do I know?
Right. Yeah. I know, man. It's strange. And like I guess if you look at the mold of like most teams today, like an example of this I would look at is like the Yankees from last year. We were kind of like power heavy. And like I guess in a sense we usually are, but our
Yeah.
stadium is, built for like left-handed power hitters. So but like most teams, like people talked about it with the Yankees. They were like, you guys need more speed, you need more defense. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I think the Rockies do not need that, in my opinion. And I mean, I just think like they name like 5 players on the Rockies right now in their position player pool.
Um, well, Story's technically still there. Uh, Tapia,
Aside from him,
there's Tapia. I was about to say CJ Crone. I don't think he's still there.
he is there,
Oh, he's
but
still there. Okay. Um, nah, that's
well,
it.
the point is that they don't have a lot of big name power guys. It's like they did when they had Arenado, they had Story. When Blackman is still there, but he's not the same player as he used to be. Um, I mean, when they had those guys, they had DJ LeMahieu for a while. I mean,
Yeah.
those were the years they made the playoffs. And I think it was 17 and 18. They made the playoffs back to back years. I think that was the first time they've ever done that. They almost won the division in 2018 by
I remember
the
that.
Dodgers. Remember they had to play game 163.
That's actually weird. They were
And
so close when I think about it. I just think the
right,
Dodgers are so much farther ahead. But yeah,
I
yeah,
know. But I think that's why, and now they've kind of not done that. Like Arenado's gone, obviously. DJ LeMahieu's gone.
DJ walked.
Not that he was a big power hitter there, but like he was a power hitter there. He would usually hit 15 homers, something like that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I think that like their pitchers, they've never really had great pitchers, if we're going to be completely honest. Like if you think there's probably a handful. Ubaldo Jimenez was good for a little while, but then he really dropped off big time. John
Right.
Gray was pretty solid there. I think John Gray was a good pitcher there, honestly. He was a pretty successful pitcher in the atmosphere of Colorado. Herman Marquez is still there. Obviously, he's actually been pretty good recently, too.
He's nice. Yeah.
I mean, I think Kyle Freeland, who's also still there, finished like 4th in the Cy Young in 2018.
Yeah.
But like, other than those few, I really can't even think of many. I mean, I think that even though Gray was pretty decent there too, I think we're going to see his numbers go up in Texas just because of leaving Colorado. I think he's going to be a better pitcher in Texas. But I just think that like they don't need power pitchers like that. I think they need more guys with like sinkers because like they always let up home runs. Like the key, even with guys like Justin Verlander or Garrett Cole, what's their one problem? Is that they always let up home runs.
Yeah.
That's where most of the runs they let up come from. And you know why that is? Because of high four-seam fastballs. And if you're going to throw a high four-seam fastball in Colorado, it's going to go 500 feet if they hit it. So I just think that's not the answer. And I just think you got to go with guys who get ground balls or get pop-ups. Like they don't need pitchers that are like power pitchers because then most power pitchers also have really good off-speed pitches. Like Justin Verlander has a great curveball, or I don't know, Max Scherzer has that great slurve. I mean, it's just like power pitchers have great off-speed, and their off-speed isn't going to work the same way in the altitude. So I also don't think that's the answer because then if you leave a fucking curveball and it stays flat, it's just going to get crushed. And that's what we see all the time there. Like,
yeah.
Especially with John Gray, when he has had bad starts there, it's always that they're hitting his high fastball or his off speed. That's what I've noticed.
Well, I think the other thing too is they're at such a disadvantage because free agent pitchers are not going to want to go there. So you have to draft like extremely well. And I mean,
or you have to draft well enough to trade too. Like if you want to trade for guys, that's the thing also. Yeah. But that's never a guarantee either. And you know, I mean, I think like if I'm going to try to like fix this team for like next year, let's say there's like a handful of guys who I think would be like perfect fits, who honestly I think teams would be willing to trade. Obviously, we talked about the A's. They're probably blowing it up, right? Sean Manaea had one of the highest sinker usages in 2021. 60% of his pitches were sinkers.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I know he has a big curveball too, but I think if they got him to locate his sinker there, it would work out pretty well. Another guy is Adrian Hauser from the Brewers. He also had like 53% sinker usage. And like, you know, the Brewers have like a surplus of pitching. They like him a lot. I don't know if they would let him go or not. But like if Colorado wants to, like, let's just say for argument's sake, Colorado's just going to go all in and do this. I think he would be a good fit. Zac Eflin from the Phillies had like over 40% sinker usage, and he's kind of coming off like a not so good year. I think if you're going to go for these guys, you can almost buy low if you're the Rockies, because like the Phillies just saw him kind of have an iffy season.
That's true.
But if it works out for you, it could be better. Like another guy, Dane Dunning, was part of a trade with the White Sox and the Rangers like 2 years ago. Okay. And then he pitched with the Rangers this year, and he was not great, but that's another guy that like you could unlock something somehow if you.
No, you might as well. There. I mean, you have nothing to lose. Just buy low in these guys. It makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at relievers, I know that like Aaron Loup just signed with the Angels, but he was one of the highest sinker percentages of any reliever this year. I know you saw that a lot.
Filthy.
But like Garrett Whitlock was a rookie that came up with Boston who was like pretty solid. Sinker, he threw a lot of sinker. Tim Meza from Toronto had 71% sinker usage out of the bullpen. That's a lot. I mean, Jose Alvarado with the Phillies had 76%. That's just I mean, that's another guy who's kind of struggled in Philly. He's been like up and down. I think he was with the Rays for a little while, and then he signed with the Phillies. And another guy though is like Clay Holmes is my perfect example of this. The Yankees got him this year from the Pirates, and he was a really good pitcher for us down the stretch out of the bullpen. And like we honestly didn't try to fix him that much. Like fix him. I mean, like we didn't try to get him to throw only four-seam fastballs, like it
Right.
happened with a lot of guys. And like we've seen it work too. Like with Garrett Cole, like when he went to Houston, they got him to throw high four-seamers instead of sinkers, and he got better. But I think for some guys, you got to let them do what they've done. Like, because Clay Holmes has kind of been around. He's been a guy who's bounced around a little bit.
Yeah.
And he was solid with us. Like, he threw a lot. He got ground ball double plays all the time. He was like our double play guy out of the bullpen, honestly. And, like, I think if the Rockies go for guys like this, it could really improve their pitching staff because they're not going to let up as many home runs. I mean, they shouldn't if they locate. It's a big if, but I feel like it hasn't worked. Nothing's worked yet. You might as well give
No,
it a
like
shot.
that's the thing. You might as well just give it a shot. I'm curious to look at like the pitch profile for like Marquez and Gray because they have succeeded there. Obviously, like they're not great at course, but they've succeeded there. So I'm curious what they've done that's worked. Like, have they gone with the sinker at all? But
Right.
I think it's a decent strategy. Might as well.
Yeah, and I mean it's just a better chance of getting ground balls than letting up a bomb. So like
Yeah.
I think you got to give it a shot. But if you're going to talk about Colorado's lineup, that's never really been a major issue. Let's
No.
say, but even when their pitching is mediocre, they still haven't been even close to the playoffs most years. Um, and I think it's because I don't really know why. I know their hitters are always pretty good, but honestly, with the team they have on paper now, lineup wise, it's not very good.
No.
Like it was like puzzling when they wouldn't be close to the playoffs when they had Arenado, Story, LeMahieu, Blackman, like the years that they weren't close. Even back in the day, they had Tulowitzki. They like barely made the playoffs when they had him. Carlos Gonzalez was there. They barely made the playoffs when they had him too.
Right.
But to me, it's like Colorado is obviously known as a place where hitters go to turn their career, like to have a better year or something. And we did see that with the guy you mentioned before, CJ Crone, who is still there. So just to look at like his stats from the past 3 seasons, from 2019, he was with the Twins. He hit 25 homers, 78 RBIs, and a 780 OPS. Then last year, the shortened season, he only played 13 games because he got hurt. He was with the Tigers. He only hit 190. He had 4 homers and 8 RBIs. So
Okay.
that's not very good. So because he barely played and his stats weren't there when he did play, teams could buy low on him. And the Rockies gave it a shot. And they signed him to a 1-year deal, 281, 28 homers, 92 RBIs, and a 905 OPS. All of those stats were career highs except for home runs. He hit 30 in 2018, but it's close enough. So I think to me, it's like if they go out there and get a guy like this for almost every position who maybe he's had success in the past and then he's coming off a down season, or he's had success in the past, he's coming off a season where he got hurt or something like that.
Yeah.
And they either make a trade or they sign a guy like that, like they did with Crone, because they did re-sign Crone after the year he had.
I was
I
just
think
about
he
to
may have
ask that
accepted
if
a
he was still in the
qualifying
market
offer.
or
Something.
not.
I think, yeah, no, I think they re-signed him, so he is still there. But if we're going by that criteria, I'm kind of going to like piece together each position that I think they need. With a guy who is coming off a bad season. On one guy who I think had a really good season there too was Ryan McMahon, who I didn't really get into his stats here, but he was pretty much the everyday third baseman there. I believe he drove in 90 runs. I think he had
some
like 20
pop, I
something
think.
homers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had a pretty decent season too. So I think to me, those guys at first and third are like the cornerstones of the team that they would want to keep there. But otherwise, again, like they have Tapia, but like he's never really done much now. He's been there for like 3 or 4 years now. I mean, like there are names like Garrett Hampson. I don't know. He hasn't done much either. It's like you might as well just like go all in for guys and see what happens, because we've seen it in the past. So many guys have gone to Colorado and had it like turn their careers around basically. So I'm gonna start with second base. and I'm going to go with Jeff McNeil from the Mets. So here's why, okay? There's a few reasons. Obviously, I think the Mets are going to trade him regardless, but he has the weird relationship with Lindor, apparently, number one. Number two, you guys still have Cano on the books, and I don't think any team is going to take him, so you might as well play him at second. But let's just look at like McNeil's 2019. He hit above 300. He had 23 homers, 75 RBIs, and a 916 OPS. He was an all-star, I think, that year. He had a great season.
No, he was freaking good.
All of a sudden, this year, he just dropped off a cliff. He hit 250, 7 homers, 35 RBIs, and a 679 OPS. I mean, that's not even
him
close.
And everyone else. Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, if you seriously, though, look at it, it's like why did that happen? He was known as like a hitter. He was known as like a base hit type guy. And so I think that obviously, like, he needs a new team to go to, like, no matter what, I think, because I think playing next to Lindor just kind of fucked him up a little bit. But I think, why not? Like, he could go out to Colorado. Yeah. He hit 23 homers with the Mets in 2019 at Citi Field, which isn't known as a big stadium. He could hit 30-something bombs if he's back to himself in Colorado easily. So if I go to shortstop, I'm going to go with Didi Gregorius. Yeah, not that he's been bad, but he hasn't been the same player with the Phillies as he was with us. And I'm going to give you his stats from 2018 because he came back and only played like half the games in 2019 with us. He had Tommy John, I think. And then there was obviously the shortened season last year with Philly. So in 2018, he had 27 homers for us, drove in 86, and he had an 829 OPS. From a shortstop, that's like pretty good numbers, honestly. And last year, he had 13 homers, 54 RBIs, and a 639 OPS. So just obviously not the same player. And I don't know why. It's not like he can't perform in a big market. He's played in New York for like 5 years or however long he was with us. And again, with some of these guys too, they are getting older. So
I was about to say, also be a reason.
Yeah. But like we've seen guys get older and then go there and still turn their careers around, whether it was like Michael Kadire. I believe he went to Colorado either before or after he played with you guys for that stretch.
It was before, but yeah.
It was before. There's been a few others. I mean, so I think that still I don't really look at the age difference because like if you can hit, you can hit, and Colorado is way easier to hit at.
Yeah.
Another guy like catcher, I don't even know who their everyday catcher is. No offense to whoever that guy is, but I really have no clue. Tom Murphy is a guy who kind of broke out with Seattle in 2019. He hit 18 homers, drove in 40, and had an 858 OPS in 2019. And then this year, he was barely over the Mendoza line. He hit 202, and he had 11 homers, 34 RBIs, and a 655 OPS. He kind of got pushed out of the starting catcher role in Seattle already. So, you know what? Fuck it. Just fucking go out and get him because, I mean, he's a guy who obviously proved he can hit 1 year before this. So, I think that's just a pretty easy fix, honestly, because I don't know who they had, but they put someone else as the starting catcher in Seattle last year after a while. Another guy for left field now. I'm going to go to the outfielders. Justin Upton, man, kind of dropped off a cliff recently the past couple of years too. Back in 2018 was his last full season. He hit 257 that year. He hit 30 bombs and 85 RBIs. He had an 808 OPS. That's kind of like what we were used to seeing from him for like the past decade before that.
Yeah.
He would always hit around 250, driving like close to 100.
That is pretty steady.
I mean, last year, he was hurt for a little while. He only played about 90 games, but still, he only hit 17 homers. He only drove in 41, and he had a 705 OPS. So the OPS number was 100 points lower. He only hit 211 also. So I know he's getting up there in age too, and Colorado is a big outfield. So you may want guys like more athletic playing the outfield, but still, why not? Like they had Kadire playing the outfield there when they did that. Like just give him a shot because he's not really part of the Angels' plans right now that I see. I don't know. They gave him the contract, but he hasn't really lived up to it. Plus, they just signed Michael Lorenzen, and Lorenzen kind of wants to be a two-way player, so I'll put him in left field.
That's awesome.
I mean, that'd be awesome. Plus, you get Ohtani some time in right field or left field too, So Why
No,
not?
sure. But I mean, also you can, if the NL has a DH next year. I mean, well, who knows at this point? But like maybe you throw Upton there. So like there's options.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if you put Upton, if they trade for Upton or something and they put him at DH, I think he would easily hit like 40 homers and be really, really good.
I wouldn't rule it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Center field wise, obviously they need a really good defensive center fielder, number one, because again, that outfield is huge. So they can't just throw anybody out there. And a name that's kind of been floated around in trade talks, honestly, is a guy from the Yankees, Aaron Hicks. I'm a big Aaron Hicks fan, but he's been hurt a lot recently. And back in 2018, that was pretty much one of his only full seasons of his entire career. Really, he's been hurt almost every year of his career. He had 248, which isn't great, but obviously that would go up in Colorado. But he had 27 homers that year, 79 RBIs, and an 833 OPS. From center field, that was pretty solid for us. And then last year, he only played 32 games because he got hurt again. He only hit 194. He had a 627 OPS. I think he's a guy whose numbers would definitely boost in Colorado, but the only thing I would be worried about is getting injured, because we've also seen guys get injured kind of a lot in Colorado too.
Yeah.
If he didn't, I think he would be like the perfect fit for center field, because like he's outstanding defensively. Like he was really good. I mean, I could name 10 plays right now that he's made that I don't even know how he caught it. So he's a stud in the outfield. And I think, like we talked about Seiya Suzuki on another episode a little while ago, if the Yankees are really serious about getting him, they're going to have to trade Hicks. So I think that it would kind of be a good fit. And right field, they do have Charlie Blackmon there, but again, he's a guy who might DH if they have the DH too. He's not as good defensively as he used to be. Max Kepler from the Twins. I don't know if the Twins were trying to contend or not. Obviously, they were trying to last year, and then it just kind of fell apart. So I don't really know what their plan is. But Kepler was part of the reason why they didn't really do much last year. He was not as good as he had been in 2019. In 2019, he had 36 homers and 90 RBIs, and he had an 855 OPS. Last year, he only had 19 homers, 54 RBIs, and a 719 OPS. So he's a perfect candidate on a team that's kind of, we think, may not be trying to compete. You get something back if you're the Twins.
I just feel like they're not very good.
Yeah. No, I don't think so either. And like Kepler had some decent seasons there, even aside from 2019. And he's a guy, I think he's just like the perfect candidate whose career would like turn around going to Colorado. I could go there for like a couple years or something. And because like when he hits homers, man, he crushes them too. Whenever I see him hit. And I think he would be the perfect fit there. You know, obviously this isn't all like easily going to happen. Obviously, like these guys have all had decent seasons, so their current teams may not even be willing to let them go because they might think they're going to be better this year. But if you're the Rockies, you haven't won consistently ever. And these guys are all coming off bad seasons. You might as well give it a shot, because you're not going to win with the current roster you have right now. Story's probably gone. I would say it's almost definite that Story's gone. I don't know. It's just if they did some of these moves, and let's say all these guys did what they were supposed to do, stayed healthy, and had career years, even better than career years, because their stats got boosted playing in Colorado, I think they would honestly, not that they would surpass a team ahead of them. You never know if they would or not. But like, still, I think they would have a better shot than they do currently. That's all I'm trying to say.
No, yeah. I mean, it would at least give them some pieces around them, and then through the draft, like you're gonna get your actual stars. Like this team, like this team would win like 76 games or so. I don't know, but like then you start piecing prospects around them. I mean, you never know. Well, once the Dodgers eventually fall off, like they, it's constant, man. Like they get these guys and like, oh, we're gonna build around, and then they trade them. It's like, all right, well now we'll build around Story, right? Oh, well now we're gonna Story walk. Like they're just never. It's just a constant rebuild to me. Like even like 2018. I guess except for like 2018 or so, but it just never felt stable. It's always like a reset, and yeah, I just want to see like a more clear direction from them. I don't feel like they have that.
And yeah, I don't either. And like I get that it's like probably difficult to like put a team together with like the altitude, with not knowing how to do it. Like no one's figured it out yet, and they've been a team for 28 years.
I was about to say, no, it's been like a decent
Yeah.
amount of time now.
Like it's not like it's been 10 years or something. Like it's been almost 3 decades, and they still
Yeah.
haven't done anything. And again, like 17, they made the wild card game. That was that crazy game with them and the Diamondbacks in Arizona when Archie
Yeah.
Bradley hit that triple. I think Story had 2 homers or something. It was crazy. And then yeah, like 2018 was probably, I mean, aside from 2007, I think 2018 was their best team. They had like Sensatella was having a great season. Freeland was good. Marquez, great. I mean, they had a pretty solid team.
That
I mean,
team
I
could have
think even
gone
their
somewhere. I feel like
bullpen,
they didn't like
yeah.
they were legitimately good. I felt like they weren't like a fluke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then all of a sudden they give Arenado the big contract and stuff, and then they
He's just
trade him
gone.
2 years later. So
No, that's the thing. Like you have to stick with that. You have to stick with your plan. You can't just send them off.
Yeah.
Because then you're also going to hurt people in the future. They're not going to want to sign long
Right.
deals with you, and then they're going to be shipped off. So I don't know.
And you know what? I think they did fire their GM earlier in the season. I think, or they hired. I don't know what they did. I think they did. And honestly, I'm pretty happy that they didn't make the same mistake with Story that they did with Arenado, because the same situation would have happened with their current roster. Story would have seen them not do anything in the next 2 years and been like, I want to leave. So I really don't think Story's going back. I don't know, man. It's fun when they're good, because like Colorado is an awesome ballpark. I love seeing guys hit there. And it was like, I remember like they had great teams, man. I mean, Carlos Gonzalez was a guy people don't even remember, but like he was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Troy Tulowitzki and Cargo were like the guys there, like for us.
They were fun to watch.
Yeah,
talk about throwback.
I mean, Carlos Gonzalez was fucking Oh yeah, I mean they were hitting probably second and third in the lineup, maybe, or something. They were just so good. It was crazy.
Each like 30 bombs a year. Health was always the issue. I thought with both of them, though.
Right. It was, and that's what I'm saying. Like you take risks when you get older-ish players there, because they might not play good. But again, I don't think Crone is like super young. I think Crone's into his 30s already.
Yeah.
And like he just had a great season. So I don't know what the answer is, but I just think you can't just keep doing the same thing and expect different results, because you're not going to get them.
No, I agree. They've gone nowhere for, even including 2018. I just feel like they've gone nowhere for like 10 years now. So yeah, might as well give it a shot. Well, we're talking. We've talked about rosters of recent years that we felt like underachieved for a few weeks now. Give me what's yours this week? What team?
Well, mine is the 2014 Tigers. They did win 90 games. They won the division, but then they got swept against Baltimore in the division series that year. So that was really disappointing, because that was a team that really should have done more.
No, and, this is like the definition of a team. Like I look on paper and I'm like, how the heck they get swept like that? I think at least make the World Series now.
The next year was the year they kind of just blew everything up there and started the rebuild. I think the next year was when Scherzer left, maybe. Verlander wasn't the same. They just had some guys that were starting to leave. They had Ian Kinsler was pretty much their leadoff hitter. He played 161 games that year too. So I remember back in the day, he would play almost every game, even with the Rangers. Like he was a solid guy every single day. Out of the leadoff spot, he had 17 homers and 92 RBIs. So that's pretty damn good from a leadoff hitter back then. Now you kind of expect that, but it was different back then. And he had 15 stolen bases. So he was always pretty solid all-around hitter. Then they had Torrey Hunter there for a while. He was usually playing right field. He drove in 83 runs. He had 17 homers as well. He was kind of getting older. That was a pretty solid season from him. And then Miggy, man. Miggy, 313, 25 homers, 109 RBIs, 895 OPS in 159 games.
Even that seems low for him, but regardless, he was still like one of the best hitters on the planet.
Yeah, and then remember they had Victor Martinez DHing behind Miggy for a little while before he retired.
That's a
And
name I forgot about. Victor Martinez.
I know back in the day, man. Like might have been honestly his best season. I don't know if he had better seasons earlier with other teams, but like in this season he played in 151 games. He was pretty much the everyday DH. He hit 335 with 32 homers, 103 RBIs, and a 974 OPS. So I mean, this dude fucking raked. That was insane. I believe I had him on my fantasy team that year too. Okay. And I wasn't expecting that. Like I remember being like, "Wow, this is crazy."
No, he was old at that point too.
Yeah, I think he was like 36 or 37 or something. He was like close to 40. And again, I think this might have possibly been his best season ever. And then they had JD Martinez too, playing left field. He only played in 123 games, so he did get hurt for a little while. But man, this was like him starting to get really good. Like he hit 315, 23 homers, 76 RBIs, and a 912 OPS. 6 stolen bases too. I mean, that was really when he started to like become who he became. Like I remember the year he got traded to the Diamondbacks in 2017. He really had like the best. He was awesome. He was like that was like the Cespedes year in 2015 for you guys.
Exactly.
Like he just carried them. And guess who else they had? They had Nick Castellanos playing third.
They had JD and Nick. That's so weird to think about now.
I know. And like Castellanos wasn't the same player as he is now. He only drove in on 66 RBIs. He had 11 homers and a 700 OPS, but still, I mean, he was pretty much the 6 or the 7 hitter in the lineup. And he was a young kid. You can't really expect much more than that. He kind of took a while to really become who he was going to become too. Then they had Alex Avila, who was known as a great defensive catcher and a good clubhouse guy. He was never really a great hitter, but he had 47 RBIs. Then they had Rajay Davis, who I forgot even played for the Tigers. I knew he played for like the Blue Jays, the Indians.
Yeah.
And I mean, that year he hit 282 and he had 36 stolen bases. So he was he always had a high number of stolen bases when he played. And Andrew Romine was the shortstop. I thought they had somebody else as the everyday shortstop back then, but I guess not.
Like catcher Andrew Romine?
No, that's Austin Romine. This
Austin Romine. Okay, I was gonna say I'm like a Romine. All right.
Yeah. But he did have 12 stolen bases out of like the 9 hole in the lineup. So, whatever. Their 1 through 8 was pretty much the key pieces here. And I mean, that was probably, I would want to look at his stats. It could have even been the best lineup in the league that year. I don't know. But
But the rotation honestly, was also filthy.
I was going to say, I don't even think the lineup is the biggest story here. Like, their rotation was nuts. Max Scherzer had a 3.15 ERA, 252 strikeouts. Verlander was the only one out of this group, actually, that kind of had a bad season. This was before he, like, redid himself, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, he figured out again what he was going to do. But this year, he had a 4.54 ERA. So not great. He only had 6.9 strikeouts per 9 innings, too, which was, like, I think a career low for him. But other than that, they were awesome. Like, they had Rick Porcello, who had a great season. He had a 3.43 ERA. Anibal Sanchez also had a 3.43 ERA. So they were both pretty much identical pitchers that year. Drew Smyly had a 3.93. So that's pretty solid from your 5-starter, honestly.
Yeah.
And they traded for David Price at the deadline. So they also had David Price. And in his 11 starts that year, he had a 3.59 ERA and 9.5 strikeouts per 9. I mean, if you really looked at that team in the playoffs, I don't know exactly how they did it. I think they still pitched Verlander the way they were gonna, but it should have probably been Scherzer, Price, Porcello, Sanchez. I don't even know if Verlander. I don't know. I know he had the postseason experience, but I'm not sure how his numbers were that year in the playoffs. But I mean, that rotation. Are you kidding me? You didn't win a World Series with that rotation? Come on, man. That's just crazy to me.
Anibal Sanchez is a sleeper name. He had a decent run.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because then he bounced back with the Nationals with Scherzer, actually, in 2019 when they won a World Series. He was a stud in the playoffs that year, remember? He had like a great start against the Cardinals in 2019. Yeah. He was like really good. So, yeah, he's a name people forget about. I mean, Porcello, I think people forget about too, because he had he won the Cy Young one year, didn't he? With Boston or with
Yeah,
Detroit? I
that
don't
was like a
remember
Mickey
where.
Mouse Cy Young, but that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, but just if you look at this rotation, I mean, Scherzer won a Cy Young, Verlander won a Cy Young, Price won a Cy Young, and Porcello
And
won a
so,
Cy Young. They had 4 Cy Young winners in their same rotation and didn't make it past the divisional series.
no, like
They
this
got
is definitely
swept,
one of the best teams to never do anything.
right? And like they were close. Like even not this year. Like the Tigers themselves were close. Like in 2012, they made the World Series and they lost to the Giants. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not like they never made it there either. But with this specific rotation and starting lineup, I don't know how they didn't win. Honestly, I mean,
No.
even their bullpen was pretty solid. They had Joe Nathan, who had a 4.81 ERA, but he had 35 saves. So I think that was back in the day where like they kind of just went with the same like their closer, even though he wasn't like that good. But
Okay.
I mean he had 35 saves, so it's not like he was bad. Maybe like his ERA was blown up from a couple of bad outings or something. But
Mm.
he was like 39 years old this year too, so I think this was kind of like his last big season that he had. Um, but they had Jabba Chamberlain, who had a 3.57 ERA, former Yankee. He won the World Series with us back in 09. Phil Koch, 3.88 ERA. Al Albuquerque had a 2.51, and Blaine Hardy had a 2.54. I mean, their bullpen, those were their top, pretty much the top guys. Everyone had an ERA below 4 other than Nathan, but Nathan had 35 saves. So, I mean, that was pretty solid too. I don't know. That was not really a problem, I don't think. I
Not
guess Nathan's
really. It doesn't. I mean, it
ERA
doesn't
is
seem like
something,
it.
yeah. I mean, even their bench though, they had Austin Jackson, who I think he was like splitting time in the outfield, but then he got hurt a lot, so that's why
Okay.
Rajay Davis kind of became the everyday guy in center. But um, Austin Jackson was a pretty good player over his career. They had Eugenio Suarez on their bench that year too.
Hmm.
I don't know if you knew that.
No. Him and
Yeah.
like
So
two future Reds. I totally forgot about.
right. Um, this was before he really broke out. I think he might have even gotten traded to the Reds like right after the season. I mean, they had like Ezekiel Carrera was a backup outfielder with the Blue Jays for a while. He was on the Tigers. I didn't even know that. Brian Holiday was the backup catcher. I mean, their bench, they're not like a ton of household names, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know most of them. So I don't know, man. To me, I don't understand how they weren't better. Or I mean, they were good, but then they got swept. Like they should have made it farther in the playoffs because they won 90 games. It's not like they had a bad season either. It's just like they should have made it farther in the playoffs.
Probably should have won more than 90, honestly, but that's besides the point.
Yeah,
Dude, I feel like that
right.
those Baltimore teams, like they would just get hot at the right time. Like I feel like
Yeah.
if we looked at Baltimore's roster that year, it's probably like half as good as Detroit's, and they just
Hmm.
always like close games. I remember they'd always come through with like with that bullpen.
Yeah, man. They had like Britton, O'Day, all those guys.
Right,
So
and
like, yeah, I agree.
like I mean, I always remember that big hit Nelson Cruz had in Game
Yeah,
3 against the
that was
Tigers.
off of David Price actually.
That
So
was off of David.
they must
Okay,
have gone. They must have gone Scherzer, Verlander, Price then in the playoff rotation.
I guess so.
I'm
That would make
assuming.
sense. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know, man. They just,
yeah,
I always say like if you just slip in the playoffs, you can do anything. I mean, like the 2019 Nationals were that
hmm
way. Like,
yeah.
but and then like, on the other side of that, like great teams just suck randomly for
I
40
know.
games.
Yeah, and again, this could have ended a lot differently if they ended up beating Baltimore in this series. They might have won the World Series. Like if something
Mm-hmm.
had gone their
Yeah,
way somehow, like they might have. And I just think again, like this was the last year because then the next year they started trading everybody. In the
yeah,
offseason it started. Then at the deadline, Price got traded to Toronto. I believe they traded a bunch of other guys. Like I think Castellanos got traded that year as well, maybe.
yeah.
I don't know. When did
Was
he
it
get traded to the
JD?
Cubs? I forget what year that was.
I'm losing.
Maybe
Yeah, I'm losing
no,
track
JD
of
got
it.
traded 17. But that's when they started to move everybody regardless. So I mean, that was 2014 was kind of the last straw there, and they didn't get it done. So
No,
that's always going to be like a what if team because it so easily could have been a World Series championship.
And I did see a graphic the other day of like the guys Baltimore threw out in that series. Just one last point. It was like Wyan
Oh man.
Chen. I think Jimenez might have been one of them.
Yeah, it might have been Chris
Like,
Tillman was the other
no,
guy
that's
probably.
the thing.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like Detroit got beat by like these stars. It was just like
No.
these random
Yeah.
ass pitchers.
That's
Yeah.
crazy, man. I didn't even think about fucking Baltimore's rotation. That's nuts.
No, yeah, they really couldn't pitch, but
Yeah.
so
What do you
um
got as a team for you?
so ironically, I didn't plan this. I also have the team that would get David Price at the deadline the following year. I'm going with the
Okay.
2015 Blue Jays. So they won 93 games, but their expected win loss, they won 102, like based on run differential. So point in
Mhm.
saying that is they were freaking good. Like they scored 891 runs. Um, I mean, obviously the big three in that team was Batista, Encarnacion, and Donaldson. So Batista, 40 homers, 114 RBIs. Encarnacion, 39, 111. Donaldson, 41, 123. He won MVP. I think that was his first
Oh, okay.
year there, I think. But he was
It
insane.
probably was. Yeah, I think.
So that was obviously the big three that carried them. But like you also had Russell Martin at catcher, 23 bombs. Justin Smoke, 18. Chris Colabello was a utility player, and he
Oh,
had an
wow. Yeah.
886 OPS for them. So like you had him, Kevin Pillar with like the great defense. So like it was a up and down a really good lineup. I mean, similar to the Detroit one, maybe even better. I don't
I
know.
and I think did they trade for Tulowitzki that year also at the
Oh,
deadline?
you
I
might
feel
be
like that was
right.
that year
I think
because I think that also they went on like a big winning streak when they first got him or something.
that sounds about right. Actually, I think he wasn't as good
Yeah.
anymore. That's probably why I missed him.
Yeah.
But still, like
Yeah.
they had Tula.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like great 1 through 9. So pitching, it was Ari Dickey, Mark Burley, Marco Estrada. They all had ERAs in the threes. So like it's a decent rotation.
Yeah.
And then they go out and get Price. He had a
Hmm.
2.3 ERA and 11 starts with them. So I think
Yeah, man, I
obviously
remember that. He really put the team on his back that year. That was
he
crazy.
was an ace, man.
That
You
reminded me of
had
like CC Sabathia when CC went to Milwaukee. That Price, what Price did in Toronto, reminded me exactly of that. It was
yeah.
pretty crazy.
No, dude, this was like probably his peak of his career, honestly.
Yeah.
Roberto Osuna was like 20 years old.
Oh yeah, man. Wow.
And he had 2.58 ERA as a closer. In the bullpen, you had Aaron Sanchez, Liam Hendricks. That's the name I didn't know was
They
there.
had Liam Hendricks. Holy
Yeah,
shit.
Brent
That's
Cecil. So
crazy.
they all had ERAs of 3.2 or lower. So like honestly, all like starting bullpen and lineup, they were kind of stacked, man.
I was
Um,
gonna say too, I don't know how much Stroman played, but I think he was up that year at some point. I don't know
I
if that
think
was
he
his first year
was.
up, but like I know he was kind of that might have been the year he was like up and down. I forget when he made his debut, but I do remember I think that was the year of Bautista's bat flip.
Right. So
And I remember Stroman on the bench going like nuts. Like I remember that
I will
vividly.
never
So I don't
forget
know
that
how much
game.
he pitched, but yeah, that
Yeah.
was crazy. I remember
No, it's like
watching that right when it happened.
Stroman was like a kid then. I forgot he was
Right.
probably his first year. But yeah,
Yeah.
you just said ALDS. I mean, well, probably one of the more iconic home runs, honestly, like in history now. Um,
Hmm.
what I forgot about that series was they were down 2-0 to the Rangers.
Right. Yeah, they
I
were.
know I totally forgot that. So then they came all the way back. And then they
Plus,
were
they
down.
came back winning 2 games in Texas too. Like they lost the first two
That's
games at
true.
home, so that was
Okay,
even
that's
crazier.
another thing. And then,
Yeah.
do you remember before the Batista home run, there was that crazy play with the interference and the fans were
Mm.
like throwing stuff on the field?
Yes. Yes.
Just a
I
bizarre
do. Was
game.
it with Russell Martin, right, or
It
was it with the
probably was.
Texas?
Yeah.
I forget which team. Yeah, yeah, that was crazy. I remember that. Like that was when Texas had Prince Fielder too. Like that was a good Texas team. That's another
Mm,
team we could talk about another day. But
yeah, honestly.
yeah.
So yeah, they were down 2-0 in the series. They were down in game 5. They came back. So then they ran to the Royals.
Hmm.
They also fell behind 2-0 in that series. And then they lost game 4 like 14-2. So they were down 3-1 in the series. Game 6, Osuna blew in the 8th, and then they were done.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
so, I mean, like you look at Encarnacion, he had no homers, 2 RBIs in that series. Russell Martin batted 1 for 11. R.A. Dickey got blown up in his only start. So, like, there
Mm,
were a bunch of things that
okay.
went wrong.
Hmm.
And, the Royals went on to win that year. So, like, it's not a
Right.
huge shame, but, like, it's a
Yeah.
good team, man.
That was, man. And like that's almost like the Tigers where it was almost like their last year until they started to rebuild. They made the
Yeah.
playoffs again in 16, but after that it was kind of all over. So,
It was their best shot.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's crazy too, like I mean, again, if you have that lineup alone, it was like Donaldson, Bautista, Encarnacion, and then I'm almost positive they did get Tulowitzki that
I
year,
think
and I
you're
think
right.
he did
Yeah.
play a decent amount. So like their top four, I think Tulowitzki led off. I think it was Tulowitzki, Donaldson,
Okay.
Bautista, Encarnacion. I mean, can you
That's
imagine trying to pitch those guys in the top four of a lineup? That's just crazy to me.
No, they
Plus, they
definitely one
had
of the
like
better
Russell
offenses
Martin
the
after
last
that.
decade.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Bautista had just insane years once he went to Toronto. Encarnacion too. Donaldson was always good before he went there, but I think he really
He
like
really broke out
erupted when
there.
he got there too. Um, yeah, I mean, I forgot about that. Ozuna was their closer when he was like 20 years old that year.
Yeah. I know.
He
I
was
totally
really
forgot
good.
that.
Where is he now? Is he in Houston now? I forget what team he
I
was on.
think so. I
I
don't
think
think
he got
he's
hurt
ever.
last year though. I don't even know.
Yeah, he's been up and down.
Yeah,
But yeah, man. I don't
but
know.
yeah, I mean,
Toronto's just fun.
Liam
Like you mentioned, how
Hendricks.
Colorado is fun. I can't speak. Colorado is fun to watch when they're good. I feel the same way about Toronto.
Right.
It's just like in that park, and yeah, that team was like the peak.
And you guys could have easily played them in the World Series, which is kind of crazy too.
So I
That would have
always
been
say,
a weird World Series.
I think if we played Toronto, we would have won, because the
You think
problem
so?
was the Royals never struck out. Like, remember how good our
Right.
rotation was?
Yeah.
The Royals never struck out, but Toronto like definitely could. Like, with all the power guys, I think we would have won if we played Toronto. But that's such a what if. So
Yeah, it is. That would have just been like a funny World Series because like R.A. Dickey would have been pitching against the Mets.
that's true,
Stroman
against
would have
Syndergaard,
been too.
Darno.
And then, yeah, right. Like that would have been such a weird like scenario. You know what I mean? Because, and then like
Yeah.
Stroman would have been there and then he would have pitched for the
Oh,
Mets like later
true, true,
on too.
true.
So like that would have been weird also. Like there's so many like weird connections there. That would have been kind of funny.
No, yeah. Well, we'll never know.
No.
But I mean, we're sticking with throwbacks now. Who's your guy from childhood years that you remember?
So I'm going to talk about a guy actually who did play for Colorado a little while towards the end of his career, like Kadire, but it's Justin Morneau, man. Justin
Mm,
Morneau from 2006 through 2016, which is when he retired. I mean, he was a stud. If you remember, I know his career kind of got derailed a little bit because he did get some concussions. But
okay.
then he kind of got better again when he went to Colorado. But yeah, I mean, he played over those 11 seasons. He averaged 117 games played. So again, I think he had some seasons where he was
Yeah.
out a decent
Yeah.
amount of time because of concussions, but he was still really good when he was on the field. He hit his average over those 11 seasons was 287, 18 homers, 82 RBIs, and an 828 OPS. So,
Hmm.
that's pretty solid. I mean, would you like more homers maybe from first base? Like, sure, but he had great seasons though. I mean, he was also really good in the playoffs. He played 7 playoff games with the Twins, and he played 6 playoff games with the Pirates when he got traded over there at the deadline one year. His career postseason stats is 302, 2 homers, 4 RBIs, 805 OPS, and 8 runs scored. So he was pretty solid when he did get to play in the playoffs. Obviously, that's not that many games, but still, I mean, when he was in the playoffs, he performed. But yeah, I mean, he was with the Twins for 8 years before he got traded to Pittsburgh. So he only played with Pittsburgh for like half a season. That was, I think, back in 2015 or 16, whenever it
Okay.
was that Pittsburgh, or maybe 14. I don't know. Whatever year Pittsburgh made the playoffs. Um, then he had 2 years with Colorado. And then he finished his career with 1 year with the White Sox. But yeah, I mean, he was the 2006 AL MVP. He hit 321, 34 homers, 130 RBIs, 934 OPS.
I actually know. I
130
know he
is
had
a
that
big
good of a
number.
season. Okay.
Yeah. I think like again, I think probably from 2006 through maybe like 2012, 13 were like his best seasons out of this stretch. But like he probably averaged this about every year during this stretch, honestly. But I mean, he was a 4-time All-Star though, 2-time Silver Slugger. He was he finished in the top 23 MVP voting 4 times, and he won it in 2006, obviously, and he was the runner-up in 2008. So he had really good seasons early on, and in 2014 he was with Colorado, so he got traded to Pittsburgh then in 2013. But in 2014 with Colorado, he won the National League batting title. He hit 319 that year, which is kind of surprising that was the highest average, in my opinion.
Does seem a
319
little
isn't
low.
that high.
Yeah.
But again, that's a guy too. Obviously, going to Colorado kind of boosted him back up a little bit. He had a great season that year. But yeah, man, I think like he would have been even better if he never got the concussions that he got, because I think he got like 2 concussions pretty badly or something. I think he may be on the Hall of Fame ballot this year because he retired in 2016.
I was gonna say
he was last year. I don't know.
He seems like one of those guys who's like in between, almost like a Johan Santana. Like they're close,
yeah, I agree.
but they're probably not. But they still like those are great numbers.
Yeah, I mean, again, like anytime you win an MVP over your career, you had that's awesome. I mean, that's really good. Obviously he never won a World Series, but he performed in October, which is another thing that Hall of Fame voters do look at. Obviously it was only 13 games, but still, when he did play in the playoffs, he was good. It's not his fault that his teams didn't make the playoffs. Because he always had great like I'm surprised that I think he was only in the playoffs with Minnesota. It might have been 2009, maybe. I think that was the year the Twins lost to us. In the divisional series or the championship series, I forget. But yeah, I mean, Justin Morneau was really good, and like then he went to Colorado. I mean, it was just that's a perfect example of what could happen to every guy I said before. So.
No, right? You proved yourself perfectly with that argument. So
who you got?
I really didn't plan this. I was going to talk about Carlos Gonzalez. Like this is really a Rockies episode now, apparently. But I wanted to talk because like kind of like what you're saying. I feel like when you think of the early 2010s Rockies, it's always like Tulowitzki. And Gonzalez was freaking good. So I'm looking at 2010 to 2016, averaged 126 games played. So, clearly got injured a lot. 26 homers, 86 RBIs, 888 OPS. Yeah, I mean, again, like those are misleading. He like per 162, he was
exactly
better than that. So 2010, he finished his 3rd in MVP voting. He won the batting title with 336, 34 homers, 117 RBIs. 2015, he hits 40 homers. Only made 3 All-Star games. That I also feel like is misleading. Like, for example, that 2010 year I just mentioned, he wasn't in the All-Star game. So I feel like that's not really the best barometer. I guess it's like if you have a hot second half, you don't won't get in. But the point is, 3 All-Star games, 3 Gold Gloves. Fell off after 2016. He was only like 30, but he really fell off. But before that was great. And for all those people who are like, "Oh, it's Coors," it's just great because it's Coors. You actually have a point. Unfortunately, his career OPS on the road was 724. So he was like an average player on the road.
I didn't know that actually. That's
like I wish it was that. He's not like Larry Walker. I feel like was like the one guy who like broke that. Maybe there was some more. I don't know, but yeah. So still super fun to watch. Always like I felt like whenever the All-Star game was on, it was always him and I can't remember who, like Stanton in the outfield. Like they were just like those staples out there. But yeah, definitely someone I think about with that, like growing up.
Oh yeah. Cargo was so fun to watch. I mean, he whenever he hit a homer, like he knew it too. And like he would do the thing where he would like do a full swing and just like drop his bat like so nonchalantly. Like it was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that? Like he was the king of that. It was like awesome. I mean, honestly, I know that Cano, everyone said he had like the sweetest swing of a left-handed hitter, but Cargo to me, I mean, I loved that swing, man. It was so good.
It's fun to watch, man.
Because
honestly,
when he would make contact, it was just like, I mean, in Colorado especially, that ball would just not land. Like that would just go 1,000 feet. Like it was crazy. I didn't know he was as good defensively as he was. I didn't know he won 3 Gold Gloves, especially playing in Colorado too. He had to have a lot of range, like to really play in that outfield. So
I mean, like we said, just one of those big what ifs. Like, what if him and Tula just stayed healthy? If they had some pitching around them, never know. But it was was a fun era. Like I definitely like looking back at those years.
Oh yeah, definitely. Cargo was really, really fun to watch. I would have been nice. I don't think he ever did a home run derby, but that would have been a cool thing to see too.
Oh, maybe that's weird. Yeah,
maybe he did one. Like I don't know if he did any.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, for stat of the week, I just Googled weird MLB stats, see what I could find.
Okay.
So Edgar Martinez, Hall of Famer, he except against was obviously amazing, except against Nolan Ryan. So in his at-bats against Nolan Ryan, he struck out 53% of the time. In his at-bats against everyone else, 17%.
Really?
Isn't that weird? Wow. That's almost triple. I think it is triple.
Yeah. Like I feel like Hall of Famers always have like one guy they were just like never good against.
You know what I mean? Right. I'm curious how many at bats that is too. I'll have to dig that up.
Yeah.
But no.
Well, if Edgar played in Seattle and Nolan Ryan played in Houston and Texas, it had to be a lot.
That's true.
Because they're in the same division, so yeah.
Nolan Ryan, man, was freaking built different.
Yeah, man. Man, we'll never see a pitcher like that ever again, I don't think. So
no,
but yeah, man. A guy like Edgar striking out that much, what the hell? That's fucking weird, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious like what he thought of that. Like it would just like get in his head. Like he would walk to play like a freaking Nolan.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
Well, that wraps up for us. Everyone have a Merry Christmas, and we'll be back next week, and we'll dig up some more throwback stuff for you guys. Yeah. Have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll be back next week. Peace.